This is Amy. Amy has a renal system. The renal system has the kidney, ureter, bladder, and urethra. The kidneys process the plasma portion of blood by removing substances from it and, in a few cases, by adding substances to it. The kidney is crescent-shaped with two layers, the cortex and the medulla. The first step in filtering the blood occurs at the glomerulus. Plasma, the liquid component of the blood, escapes into the Bowman's capsule, which is found in the nephron. This starts when blood flows through the afferent arterioles and leaves the glomerulus through the efferent arterioles. Once in the Bowman's space, the fluid will enter the proximal tubule. Amy's proximal tubule is where reabsorption of all nutrients, most of the bicarbonate, sodium and potassium, and water occurs. The fluid within the tubule then flows down into the thin loops. The fluid encounters a hyperosmotic environment, so water is pulled out and the solutes will equilibrate till equilibrium is reached. The fluid then moves up towards the cortex region into the thick ascending limb. This is where there is lower water permeability, so it cannot follow the solute movement. Sodium chloride is pumped out at the beginning of the limb. This sets up the osmotic gradient as well as dilutes the fluid. The macula densa cells detect flow rate and they send a signal to the afferent arterioles. When the flow is too high or too low, you will get a constriction of the afferent arterioles. The ultrafiltrate rounds the bend to the collecting duct. Here, water reabsorption occurs depending on how much vasopressin is present. The driving force of water reabsorption gets greater and greater as you move down into the inner medullary region, so urine can be concentrated. The XX bicarbonate in the collecting duct binds to some of the protons being secreted and is converted to carbon dioxide and then freely reabsorbed into the body. There should be complete reabsorption of bicarbonate. Urea permeability in the collecting duct is regulated by vasopressin. Amy, who is 21, had a fun night out with her friends last night. As she enjoyed her shaken, not stirred, overpriced martini, her body began to respond to the introduction of alcohol into her bloodstream. The first change is the inhibition of vasopressin secretion, also known as antidiuretic hormone. This blocking of the hormone's production of osmoreceptors in the pituitary gland prevents the insertion of aquaporin channels into the collecting duct of the nephron, leading to a more dilute and hypoosmotic urine. Without the ability to concentrate urine through water reabsorption, the need to urinate is much more frequent due to high volumes of urine filling the bladder. Although her bladder and internal urethral sphincter are under the control of the autonomic nervous system, she was able to hold it thanks to somatic skeletal muscle control of the external urethral sphincter. The next morning, Amy is having some regrets as she is quite hungover and unfortunately has an upset stomach. Replacing the water lost through urine, sweat, and excrement is essential in maintaining homeostasis of plasma volumes and ion concentrations. If this water is not adequately replaced by food and drink, a person is considered dehydrated. Vomiting in particular results in excessive water loss, and because Amy has not been making an effort to replace these lost fluids, she ends up in a state of dehydration. Let's look deeper into what this exactly means in terms of her renal system. The nephrons within her kidneys now are increasing reabsorption of water from the collecting ducts. This can be done because vasopressin secretion is increased, allowing for the insertion of additional aquaporin water channels. The result of this upon micturition is a small volume of very concentrated hyperosmotic urine. This is all in hopes of attempting to bring total body fluid osmolarity back to normal. The high plasma osmolarity is not combated by this increased water reabsorption alone. Additional fluid intake is necessary in order to maintain homeostasis. Osmoreceptors detect this increased osmolarity and begin to stimulate a feeling of thirst. Because of this and the dry mouth and throat feeling that Amy was having, she heads to the kitchen and pours herself a large glass of water. Now that you know everything about renal physiology, let's check your knowledge. Feel free to pause the video and take your time answering these questions. What is one of the three layers of the filtration barrier? Capillaries made of endothelium cells, basement membrane, or a single cell lining of the epithelial cells called podocytes. Which segment of the nephron is the diluting segment? The thick ascending limb. Does alcohol lead to a more dilute or more concentrated urine? Alcohol leads to a more dilute urine.